are now recording. All right, everybody, again, welcome to my garage. Hopefully you're not judging me because it's a mess, but these things happen. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about the properties of matter. Now, I know we've read a little bit about it. We did some activities this week on it, so I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about it. And again, if you have any questions at all, you can either post a question in the Google Classroom assignment, or you can type them into the chat on the screen. All right. Let me go ahead, and I see Reese has got another message in there. Let me go ahead and open that message up. And Reese says, I'm here. All right, good, Reese, very good. And I just got a message from Jackson. Let's see what Jackson has to say. We can hear now, but we can't see or type in the chat. Okay, Jackson, if you can't see or type in the chat, just go ahead and do what you're doing right now. I will get the messages, okay? In fact, I'm going to go ahead right now and open Science Classroom so I can make sure that I can get to those messages. All right, so as I said, I am going to talk a little bit about the properties of matter. And then we will go over the social studies study guide because we're going to have a test tomorrow. All right. All right. Okay. Hold on. All right, I'm here. I cannot see the box. Okay, Oscar. It just all you have to do is type the comments in the comment section, right where you're typing. Okay. All right. All right. So the matter has different properties. Texture, color, and size are just some ways that we can we can separate different types of matter. So the other day, I went walking on the beach, and I collected some seashells. Okay. Well, I guess it really wasn't walking on the beach. I went walking along the river, and I got some seashells. So here's one seashell that I got. Oh, it's got sand all in it. One seashell that I got right here. All right. And then here is another seashell that I got right here. And I got another one right here. Another one right here. And another one here. It's a little bit hard to see. Sorry, the lighting's not the best in my garage. And then finally, this was my favorite one that I found right here. Okay. All right, so I've got all those shells. Now I'm trying to think of a way to classify these shells, right? I got this shell, I've got this shell, I've got this shell, this shell, this shell, and this shell. Now, of course, we could classify them according to what kind of animal lived in them. This is a conch right here, so this would be a snail that lived inside there. A snail lived inside here, and then a clam lived in this, and a clam lived in this one, and an oyster lived in this one. So we could classify them according to what animals lived in there. But let's say we didn't know what type of animal lived in there. So we could also classify these according to the texture. So this one is a little bit smooth. This one is really smooth. This one is really smooth. So we could put these three shells together, and call them the smooth shells, right? And then these shells right here, these all have ridges and bumps on them. So we could call them the rough shells. All right, we could classify them according to the texture. Another way that we could classify them is according to the color. So this one right here is white. This one right here is white. This one right here is white as well. So now we could classify these according to their color. This one is gray. We'll call it gray because it's not really black. This one is gray, and this one is closer to black, but it's a shade of gray. So these three, we could classify them as gray. That's another way that we could classify them. We could classify these according to their size. Now, most of these are pretty large, but we could classify these as medium size, maybe, and then this one as small. We could classify them according to their size. All right, so those are some ways that we could classify matter. We can use those ways to classify matter if we didn't have any outside measuring device or something like that to help us classify them in other ways, okay? Will you have your screen and mic off so I don't know? So Alex, you can't hear me? Alex, can you hear me? Oh, okay. All right. All right, good. All right. So those are some ways that we can classify matter. Those are some basic ways that we can classify matter. Now, there is other ways that we classify matter, and those are the three types of matter. That's solid, liquid, and of course, gas. So each form of matter, every part of matter is made up of particles, and those particles are made up of atoms. And depending on what the composition of the item, it depends on what type of atom it's made of. But the each type of matter, believe it or not, will be able to take three different forms, and that's as a solid, as a liquid, or as a gas. So in a solid, it's its state that it is in without being heated or without being cooled. So this seashell right here is in a solid state, right? If we were to heat this, believe it or not, if we were to heat this to the point where it would turn into a liquid, then of course it would be a liquid. And then eventually, if we heated it further, it would have start to evaporate and turn into a gas. All right. So a solid, in the solid, the particles, they're the particles inside here, the little teeny tiny atoms inside here, the little teeny tiny particles, believe it or not, they are moving, but they are not moving very quickly. As a matter of fact, they're moving very, very slowly, but they are moving. They are spinning. Inside, they're kind of like the Earth spins around the sun, but they are moving, but very, very slowly. And they are tightly packed together. Tightly packed together, meaning that there is very, very little space between them. Now, if we were to heat this and we were to get a liquid is, again, there's tiny particles. They're moving, those particles are still moving slowly, but they're beginning to speed up. They're beginning to move a little bit faster, and they're still packed tightly together, but there's more space in between them. And then finally, as a gas, the gas is when those particles get super excited and they can't be contained within the container. When you boil water in a teapot, the water gets to the point where it boils, and then that boiling water gets so excited it turns into steam. And those steams are super excited particles that are wanting to move around and bounce off the walls, and they need to escape, so they shoot out the spout of the teapot. All right, and they're super excited. They're super excited. They keep going. They keep going, rising in the air until they start to cool off. And when they cool off, they fall back to the earth as droplets of water. And then you collect those droplets of water, and you put them in the freezer, and they'll turn into a solid. So that's solid, liquid, and gas. Now, a way that we can measure a matter is called volume. Okay. Now, let's say you're measuring the volume of a nice centimeter square of gold. Well, that's simple to measure the volume of it. You can use a ruler. But let's say you just dug a hunk of gold out of the ground and it's still in rock form. Well, you can't really take a ruler out and measure that. So what you can do is you get a graduated cylinder. And unfortunately, I'm not in the classroom, so I don't have a graduated cylinder to show you. But we have used them before. It's marked off. It's separated in according to whatever type of measurement it is. And you fill it up with a certain amount of water. Then you take and you drop your piece of gold, your hunk of gold, into the water, and the water will rise. However much that rises, that's the volume of your water. All right. Now, mass is another way to measure. It's measure a property of matter. Now, there is a difference between weight and mass. The easiest way to think about this is if you find the mass of an item here on Earth and then take that item to the moon, it's still going to have the same mass. If you find the weight of an item here, and then you take that item to the moon, that item is going to weigh a lot less. So mass is the amount of stuff in an object. Weight is the force of gravity, how the force of gravity, or how much the force of gravity is impacting that item on Earth. It's the pull of the gravitational pull of that object. All right. So remember, weight would be different between here and the moon, but mass would always be the same. And we measure mass much the same way that we do weight, and that's by using a graduated, a two-pan scale. We can use an electronic scale, any type of scale that we would to measure weight. And then also temperature. Temperature is rather important. Now, I'm not talking about taking this soda can right here and putting a thermometer on here and saying, oh, this is 76 degrees. No, the temperature for matter is the temperature at which it freezes or turns from a liquid to a gas. Okay, so the temperature that something freezes is called its freezing point, and the temperature that when it goes from a liquid to a gas is called is the boiling point. All right. So those are some properties of matter. So now I wanted to do something a little bit fun as much as possible. I understand it's kind of difficult without us being able to communicate. But what I do is I have a whole bunch of items here. And if you give me a minute to get this set up, I have a few items. And I have a fish tank. All right. So I'm going to see if they sink or if they float. All right. So I have, for example, I went out in my yard and I found a piece of wood. Now, I'm sorry for the lighting on this, but trust me, this is a piece of wood. So what do you think? If I drop this piece of wood in this container of water, and it's just regular water, will it sink or will it float? Let's see. Of course, it's going to float and float quite well. It floats all the way to the top of the water. All right, that's pretty basic, right? So then I also, on my walk the other day on the beach, I also found this rock. Okay, so it's a regular everyday rock. It looks like it was probably man-made. Got some concrete in there, and it's got a little bit of asphalt in there. So what do you think? Rock, sink, or float? We'll drop it in there. Don't want to drop it too hard because, of course, it sinks. All right. The wood floats because it is lighter than the water. The rock sinks because it is much heavier than water. Now, there's other items that are not as obvious. For example, I have, hopefully you can see this, I have a container full of beads. So what are we thinking? If I drop these beads into the water, what do you think? Will they sink or float? They're beads made out of plastic. What do you think? Let's drop them in there. Oh, that's interesting. That's odd. So some of them sink and some of them float. Now, if we take a closer look at this bead, hopefully you can see that. It has a little teeny tiny hole in it on the inside. So what is happening to the ones that are floating? Can you see that? The ones that are floating, there is air trapped in that little teeny tiny hole. So if I take the time to get the air out, they will sink. Oh, that one's still got the bubble in there. So the air, much like your floaties that you wear in the pool, was holding those up. All right. Now I have a piece of fruit. This is a pear. What do you think? Sink or float? It's a regular everyday pear. Sink or float? And that floats. That floats actually quite well. Take that out of the water because I'm going to eat that later. All right. Let's see what else I got. How about a peanut? Peanut right here. What do we think? Sink or float? And that, of course, floats like a boat. Look at that. And why? Does anybody know why that might float other than it's super light? It's got air trapped inside the shell. Okay, so not only is it super light, but it's got air. This is kind of the concept of what a boat is, in that the boat, the metal, or they used to be made out of wood, is super heavy, so it should sink. But because the air that is trapped inside, it becomes what they call buoyant, and it stays afloat. All right, so let's try a couple more here. Frying pan, basic everyday frying pan. Okay, what do we think? Sink or float? So that way, it's definitely floating. How about if we turn it this way and get the air out of it? It floats, or excuse me, it sinks right to the bottom. So this little pocket right here, this part right here, traps air. Even if you just kind of set it there, allow the air to stay, well, it still sinks. But that air is preventing it, or allowing it, the air that's trapped in here is preventing it from sinking. All right, so I found this soccer ball. I don't know where this came from. It's been when my kids were here. But this soccer ball, what do you think? Sink or float? Let's see. And of course, that will float, and it floats very well because there is a ton of air trapped inside that. Now, I tried this earlier, and it's supposed to work, but it didn't. So I have two cans of soda here. One is diet, one is not diet. It's regular everyday Pepsi. So regular everyday Pepsi Diet Pepsi. Now, if you look on the internet, there is an experiment where they do this and they drop in the regular Pepsi and it's supposed to sink to the bottom. Now, this is not sinking to the bottom, and I have a feeling it's because there's air getting trapped right in this little pocket right here. And I cannot get it to where it sinks, unfortunately. I even tried holding it down and it's not working. So it's supposed to, we're going to imagine that it's supposed to sink. And then you drop in the diet and the diet comes right to the top. And you can see that the diet is floating a little bit better. Its top is all the way above the water while this is kind of sinking below. And now the reason for that is because the regular Pepsi has a ton of sugar. This little teeny tiny can right here has 26 grams of sugar. That's about 18 packets of sugar that you get at the Dunkin' Donuts. All right. Now, one last one I do want to show you. This is a container of water. Now, this right here, this kind of starts to sink, starts to kind of floats. The reason for this is that, well, it's water. There's water in here, and water is what you call, with it as it floats in other water, is called neutral buoyancy, meaning that this weighs the same as this, so it's going to kind of hang out in the middle. It's not going to sink. It's not going to float. It's going to hang out in the middle. Now, there is a little bit of air trapped inside here. They don't fill these all the way to the top. You can maybe see that air bubble right there floating around. So that's called neutral buoyancy. All right, so those are some properties of matter. Hopefully that helped you out. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Now we should get on with some real business. And let me go ahead and see if I can get to the questions. I'm here, cannot see chat. Okay, no problem, Lucas. You found where to type. Jack's here. Welcome, Jack. It will sink and float. Not sure how many of those you got right, Oscar, but hopefully you got them all right. All right, so now let's go ahead and now I'm going to try something a little bit, hopefully. I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully this works. Present your entire screen. That's me. Share. And okay, can everybody see? Can everybody see my screen right now? Can you see week 26 study guide? Hopefully you can. Can somebody that's in the chat confirm that's okay? Yep, yes. Okay, great. All right, okay. So week 26, our introduction to our economics unit. We got to learn a lot about, now unfortunately, we normally learn this during junior achievement. But unfortunately, as we know, we can't get together to do that. So we're going to learn this using our Studies Weekly. Now this first week 26 was a great introduction to economics. Question number 1 asks, today, salt is a very important product. So salt is, I mean, it's the key ingredient to cooking. Every culture that you can imagine uses it, and it's important. It's important for the reason of seasoning, seasoning whatever you're cooking. Okay. All right. Hold on. I see a bunch of stuff coming up right now. Let me go ahead and see what those are. Float. Okay, good. All right, looks like we can all see it. All right, so today salt is very important. What was salt used for in the past? Why was it so important? Now, as you read, it really didn't give the best response to that, but it did kind of tell you why salt was so important because it was also used as a preservative. They would take, for example, they would take their beef or their pork and they would put it in a barrel and then they would surround it with salt. It would be from top to bottom full of salt. Now that would take and preserve the meat. They didn't have refrigerators, so they needed salt. Salt was extremely important because it was used as a preservative. Okay. Oh, there's more to that answer. Hold on, let me get the rest of that. Um, all right, not sure what's going on here. That is why salt is so important. All right. All right. And for those of you that didn't know, I have placed a copy of the study guide with answers in the social studies classroom. All right. And then question number 2: explain what is meant by trading goods and services. Now, believe it or not, um, trading of items was the main way of getting goods and services, distributing goods and services back in the times of the pirates. Now, if you were a sheep farmer and you had a lot of wool and you went into town and you needed to get pork, you would say, okay, I have all this wool. I'll give you a bag of wool if you give me 2 pounds of pork. So they would trade items. Um, you would trade, let's say you had a whole bunch of apples and there was a guy that needed apples. You would say, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you this bushel of apples if you come over and fix my fence. So you would be trading goods and services, goods for services. And you could also exchange services for goods. Okay. And we understand that goods is an item, it's something that you have for sale. It could be anything. It could be tires off of a car, it could be apples, it could be computers, it could be cell phones. And then a service is something that you provide, something that you do, something like a haircut, washing clothes, cutting trees down, digging ditches, building houses. All those are services. So you would trade um, one for the other. All right. All right. Explain the term scarcity. Now, scarcity basically is saying that something is not prevalent. There's not a whole lot of it. The thing that always comes to my mind when explaining scarcity is gold. Nowadays, cell phones and all these electronic items, they actually use gold inside them. So there is more and more and more of a desire to have gold. But as we use more and more and more and more gold, the less there is of it to use. For those of you that like to watch, there's numerous TV shows about guys hunting, going to Alaska and digging in the Bering Sea and all kinds of things to find gold. And gold is very scarce. So scarcity means when there is a very small supply of something. For example, in the wintertime, some fruits are not found easily. Peaches, if you love peaches, well, you're stuck in the winter because there is not many fresh peaches. So during the winter, strawberries are scarce. Strawberries is another one. There's very few strawberries around. You can find them, but of course, they're more expensive during the off season. So scarcity means when something is in very small supply. There's normally a big demand for it, but there is just not much of it. So that's scarcity. What makes something valuable? Now, I heard a famous comment. Um, the value of something is only what somebody else will give to you for it. I used to collect baseball cards when I was younger, and I would go to these shows, and people would mark their prices on the card, thinking, "Oh, it's worth $100," and no, it's not actually worth $100. It's worth what somebody will give you for it. So s- something that is said to be valuable is something is considered valuable when other people want it and there is not a whole lot of it around. For example, gold is very valuable because a lot of people want it and there is only a little left. Okay, so value is can also be something that you may value something a little bit more than somebody else. It may have some personal feeling for you, whatever the case may be. But that's value. All right. Explain the relationship between consumers and producers. Now, consumer, if you look at the word consumer, the word consume is in that word. So, consume means to use. If you look at the word producers, the word produce is inside there. So producers are the ones that make the product, produce the product. So consume is use, producers are the ones that make it. When you go to the food store, you are buying a product, so you are a consumer. When you work at a factory and you make bottles of shampoo, you are a producer. You're producing something that somebody else is going to buy. All right. So a consumer is a person that needs something, and a producer is something that makes something. So a producer makes things that consumers want or need, while a consumer buys the product a producer makes. Okay. Scarcity, scarcity. Here we are with that word again, scarcity. How does scarcity affect the value of a product? Now, for those of you that collect things like Pokemon cards, you know that there are some Pokemon cards out there that there are very, very, very few of. So, what happens to the value of those cards? Um, the value of those cards, of course, goes up. Now, if there's a ton of them, if there's a whole bunch of them out there, then the value will be less. So when something is scarce, a lot of people want it, it becomes more valuable. So the more scarce something is, the more valuable it becomes. Diamonds, diamonds are a great example because there is not many diamonds out there, and you couple that with there's not many people out there that know how to properly cut diamonds to make them appealing to the eye. So you have two factors right there to make something really, really scarce. Let's see. I want to read. I know I've been seeing a lot of um, Matthew. Can you see it now? My dog heard you talking about food. My dog's asleep. That's all my dog does is sleep. All right. So scarcity. We're clear on scarcity, hopefully. Medium of exchange. Now, medium of exchange, this is probably a different term or different, certainly a different use for the word medium, but a medium of exchange is something that is used to purchase something. So it is something like money, for example. So today we use money. Technically a credit card could be used as a medium of exchange because you're using that to purchase something. In the old times, they used to use shells. Shells, they would collect shells and then trade those shells for meat or whatever they needed. Um, just it's what you're using to purchase something. Today we use money. All right. Barter. Barter a word you might have heard before. Barter, of course, is another word for trade. If you're bartering for something, you're trading. Now you can trade. You can trade goods for goods. You can trade service for service, or you could trade goods for services or services for goods. It's something that you're not necessarily giving money for it. You are giving something else, either another good for it or another service, whatever the case may be. So that's what barter is. All right. Economics. Economics is the study of how money, goods, and services are made and used in a society. Um, the person that studies all this is called an economist. Just like a scientist is somebody that studies science, an economist is somebody that studies how money, goods, and services are made and used in society. Not every society uses money. There's societies out there that simply don't use money. Um, and then most societies do, but they use it differently. Um, and in a country that doesn't have a lot of space to grow things, well, their economy is built a little bit differently than another economy is. In Florida, tourism is super important to Florida. Our country really is, or excuse me, our state is really built around tourists because we have Disney World, all those theme parks, and all that in the center of the state, and so our economy is different than an economy, say, in a place like Kansas, where they have a lot of farmland, and in Kansas it gets cold 3 months out of the year, or, or 4 or 5 months out of the year. So their economy is based around everything happening in spring and summer. Whereas in Florida, well, we get warm weather all around the year. So we get tourists all times of the year. We can grow things all times of the year. So that's they study all of those different things, and how they impact the economy. All right, so that's what economics is. Now, this right here, you're going to the 5 products around your house. I have not been to your house, so I don't know what your 5 products are. You can open your refrigerator door and probably find 20 products that you've purchased: ketchup, mustard, bologna, um, fish heads, squid lip stew, all those kind of delicious things are things that you probably have in your refrigerator. Um, so those would be products. Now, 5 different services that you've used. We've all gotten our hair cut. That is a service. Well, hopefully you've all gotten your hair cut. I don't want anybody's hair growing to the ground, but we've all gotten our hair cut. We've all gotten our car fixed at one time or another. That's a service. Maybe we have a service that comes around and cuts our grass. Maybe we have a service when you go to Burger King or whatever you go, somebody is cooking your food. They are providing you with a service. Um, let's see, the nightly news. The newscasters on the nightly news are providing you with a service. The trash guys that come around and collect, or girls that come around and collect your trash, are providing you a service. The dog groomer providing you with a service. The cashiers at the food store are providing you with a service. All of those are examples of different services that different people provide. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's really all I have for you right now. And I apologize that we can't do a little bit more communicating, but unfortunately, those are the restrictions we've had placed on us. So hopefully you got something out of this. I really enjoyed reading a lot of your essays. Great job on those essays this week. Great job keeping up with everything. I really enjoyed seeing everybody's scores in reading and math and all that stuff. I appreciate you guys keeping up with that, and I appreciate you guys coming to see me, visit my garage. Um, you can see it is a mess and a half. All those things up there, those unused bicycles in the back, those shoes from 14 years ago in the back. We have approximately 73,000 5-gallon water bottles in the back there that we refuse to get rid of just in case. I've got 4 fish tanks in different states of repair in there. Old carpet. We're kind of, me and my wife are kind of hoarders a little bit. So a little bit, not too bad. You don't have no need to call the Discovery Channel. All right, guys. Well, I really do miss you. Hopefully, we'll get through this soon. Everybody's got to do their part. Please stay safe. Keep wearing your masks. Keep washing your hands. Stay out of crowded places. And I really appreciate you visiting with me today. Hand sanitizer, salt, fruit, of course. Yours is better. Oh yeah, mine's better than yours, Alex. So we're comparing garages now. Is that what we're doing? Okay. All right, guys. Well, I really do miss you. I'll go ahead and post a link to this video in case you need it. I've also posted the notes from the live stream in science, and I have posted the study guide for week 26 in social studies with the answers on it. So you should have that to use on Friday, or well, I guess on tomorrow. All right, so it was great chatting with you guys. Have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the weekend. Hopefully it doesn't rain too much. And thanks for coming. Thanks.